Claire Daly. 8 minutes remaining.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. I think some of the deputies have called our bill scurrilous. Some have said that they are disappointed that we have tabled it. Well, I think it's absolutely scurrilous that we are back here again, and I'm disappointed with the reaction of the government, because I have to say a lot of what's been said could be summed up as excuses, excuses. When we were here in April, you told us we had to wait for the expert group. As we've said before, at that time, Savita Halappanavar wasn't pregnant. Now the woman is tragically dead. This time we're told you need time to read it, when the whole country read it in the Sunday newspapers last weekend. And even if they didn't, let's face it, it's not really that complicated. It's a 58-page report with a lot of diagrams and pictures, and it's really quite straightforward. And that's not out of any disrespect to the people who wrote that report. The reason why we make that point is that it is patently obvious that we have to legislate. This was the outcome of all the previous expert groups. That is the reality of the situation. And what we're proposing is not to take up the opportunity of legislation tonight, but to have 20 hours of talking about it in the coming days. As Minister Shatter said last night, women have had a legal right, he called it clear and unambiguous, to have an abortion where her life is in danger, including a risk from suicide. Women have had that right for 30 years, and yet all during those 30 years, women haven't been able to exercise that right because of a successive failure of this House to legislate for it. And you know, we have to say, and it's not, you know, petty point scoring, but last week the House and all of the opposition supported a call to say that there should be legislation. We have provided legislation here tonight. We're not saying it's perfect. Of course it isn't. But it is a start. And failure to make the start tonight means inevitably that this legislation will be delayed for at least another 6 months. And can we say, is there another woman out there who isn't pregnant now who may find that our 6-month delay has tragic consequences for her? Because you see, we've had to listen to quite a few excuses. I take offence at the people from Fianna Fáil and indeed from the Labour Party who lectured us about being divisive and told us that we need to get 83 votes to get this through. Well, if those two parties supported us for a start, we'd be well on the way to getting 83 votes for our bill. So what's their point? What are they hiding behind? The government says, oh, please withdraw it. You're being divisive. We're not being divisive. We're offering up our bill to this House to make it the collective property of all of us, to send a signal to women, to the people of Europe, to everybody in this country, that collectively, as a parliament, we're going to begin to take action on something that we have ignored for so long. And you see, it's all very well for ministers to say, oh, we have a roadmap for action. Well, we've had the map, but we really need the ignition turned on and the car to be starting, because the problem here is what we've had is a huge amount of talk rather than action. And I have to say, I find it regrettable that the government hasn't allowed this bill to go through to second stage without it being challenged. And in my opinion, I think this House, not just on this issue, to be honest about it, but certainly on this issue, is totally out of touch with people in Irish society. We have had an outpouring of emotion, of ordinary citizens demanding that we take action, telling us that they're sick talking about it. I could give you a sample of the emails. One woman, as a mother, a daughter, a woman who's been through a life-threatening pregnancy that resulted in abortion. I protested tonight for the first time since I was in college. I never felt so moved to stand up and be counted in my life. I've just had my second child, a beautiful baby girl. This is not what I want for her or for my country, for which I am usually proud. Another woman, as a woman with grown-up children, I thought I'd lost the urge to fight. Well, I'm telling you now, I've refound it. Other people, I want legislation. Please do this for me, for the child that I'm carrying, for my grandchildren, who one day will be Irish and who will know you. And on and on and on. Irish people have moved on this issue, and what this discussion really shows is that the campaign to repeal the 8th Amendment starts here tonight. And not just to remove it, let me say to Deputy Keating, who couldn't be bothered to stay here to listen, not just to remove it, but to remove it in order to provide for legislation for free, safe, legal abortion in this country. And that's not walk-in, walk-out abortion. What an insult to women and their doctors to describe all the many and difficult reasons that women face and decide when choosing to have an abortion. Many of them complicated, all of them valid. How dare he slander women in this regard? And let us be clear, against the backdrop of increased austerity, our delay on this matter will jeopardise more lives, because people won't have the money for the boat or the plane and will resort to emergency medication, as described by Deputy Halligan. I'm embarrassed that our bill could only legislate for X, but it gave us the start to do that. Minister Shatter correctly last night said that even if we pass this, even if the government does come up with the legislation in 6 months' time, we will still have the most restrictive abortion regime in the world, one of them. We will still not be dealing with the thousands of Irish women every year who have to leave this country. We will not be providing for those who become impregnated because of rape or incest. We will not be providing for women with fatal fetal abnormalities, which the Minister correctly described as an indefensible cruelty. And I just want to briefly read from somebody who was subjected to that cruelty.
1 minute, Deputy.
And this woman had to leave this country. I won't have time to deal with it, but the tragedy of having to leave this country in shame to deal with a medical complication like this. But Minister Shatter's reply was to put his hands up in the air and say, well, this isn't a matter for government. Well, if it isn't a matter for government, who is it a matter for? The Minister for Equality said that women are not equal. We have a limited right to health and a limited right to our bodily integrity. That isn't enough in a modern, civilised society. The people outside this House, the people in every corner of this country will not tolerate women being treated in this way. And the reason why we are is a constitution has put in this clause to restrict our health. We know our bill tonight is only a first step. It's a necessary step to deal with this long overdue issue. We're not bringing abortion into Ireland. Irish abortion exists for thousands of women every year. What we're asking people to do is to end the hypocrisy, allow people to treat this private and personal matter as one of personal choice between them and their doctors. And I think ourselves and all of the people who've been in touch over the past number of weeks will not rest until this House starts to deal with these issues. I'm not withdrawing the motion, the bill, Count Corlett. We do want to press it, not as a panacea, but as a signal to our citizens, to future generations and to the eyes of the world who are looking in on us that we are at last beginning with some seriousness to address this long overdue issue.